Welcome everyone to the Virtual Office Hours, episode 10 in our History of American Evangelicalism series. Megan just gave me the thumbs up because I finally got the episode right and we just lost George Washington. I'm over here at my desk today because the sun is bad over at the table here in my office. Megan Piet, as usual, behind the camera. The Founding Fathers are with me. And today we are second episode on George Marsden's book, Fundamentalism in American Culture. I have the 25th anniversary edition here. And we've been working through this book very slowly. We're spending more time on this book than I think any other book because I think it's so formative to the history of 20th and 21st century American evangelicalism. Now, Marsden lays out in the first 10, 12 chapters or so, he's constructing the sort of ideological or the intellectual roots of this movement that's really going to take off in the late teens, 20s, and 30s, known as fundamentalism. And at this point, we've read through, what's it been, where are we up to, chapter 12? I think we're up to chapter 12 or so. He has already now shown three major kind of ideas informing evangelicalism, stressing the fact that fundamentalism is actually both an intellectual and a rational movement, but it's also a movement of piety, and it's bringing those two ideas together. One of the great things about Marsden's book, I think, the great contributions he makes, is he shows that fundamentalists are inherently not anti-intellectual. They make reasoned and rational arguments, deductive Baconian arguments about things. You may not necessarily agree with the arguments that they make, but at least they're making arguments. And then at the same time, they fuse those arguments, or those arguments are supplemented by a deeply held piety. So far we've looked at three sort of roots of evangelicalism. The first one is eschatological. It is the fundamentalist commitment, for the most part, not every fundamentalist fell into this camp, but for the most part, fundamentalists were committed to a vision of the end times known as premillennial dispensationalism. I'll just use dispensationalism from here on out. Dispensationalism basically taught three things. One, that the world was, or the history of humankind was divided up into sort of certain epochs or dispensations. Most dispensationalists said there were 7 of them. And in each of those dispensations, God deals with humankind, men and women, in different ways. So obviously the first dispensation, in the Garden of Eden, God dealt with human beings very differently than he did, say, in the dispensation we're supposedly in today, the church age. So again, dividing up history into these dispensations based upon the way God seems to have worked. And of course, this is based on the way the Bible. This is a literal, sort of very common sense reading of the Bible, right? These are the 7 epochs of human history. The second part of dispensationalism is a clear distinction between the promises God makes to the church and the promises God makes to the nation of Israel. There's still a place in prophecy for the nation of Israel, and someday all the Jews will return to Israel and will be converted to Christ, to the Christian gospel, and God will return. Second coming will take place in Israel, in Jerusalem. And then third, there's a commitment here to this idea of the rapture, or the idea that at some point all true believers, all evangelical Christians, born-again Christians, are going to be taken up into the air with God. We see this in the books by Tim LaHaye, the Left Behind books, and so forth. So dispensationalism is a powerful movement. It's taught at prophecy conferences around the country in late 19th century. The second stream of evangelicalism comes out of the higher life, or the Holiness Movement, a movement in which the focus is on living a victorious Christian life, right? Overcoming sin. Some holiness teachers in the 19th century actually believed in perfectionism. The roots here, Charles Finney, and that aspect of the Second Great Awakening. In the turn of the 20th century, the Holiness Movement really splits into a Pentecostal stream, which is going to celebrate many of the so-called spiritual gifts like tongues and healing and so forth. And then it's going to connect to a stream that's associated with a movement in England known as the Keswick movement. The fundamentalists are really going to be much more in line with the Keswick movement, because they're going to reject a lot of the supernatural dimensions, especially the tongue speaking, the healing, something called the second baptism associated with the Pentecostals. So they're gonna reject tongues, for example. They're gonna say tongues is not for today. And then finally, fundamentalists, and Marsden uses David Moberg's phrase, the great reversal here. Fundamentalists are going to, because of their premillennialism, which says the world is going to hell, we need to save as many people we can, but also because of their resistance to the social gospel, to people like Washington Gladden and Walter Rauschenbusch, who are advocating a new form of gospel in which we will usher in the return of Christ, and the highest calling one can have is to solve social problems in the world rather than convert people to the Christian gospel. There's going to be a great split there. Fundamentalists are going to be concerned about the social gospel because they believe the social gospel emphasizes social concern over evangelism. It's not that, Marsden's nuanced here. It's not that evangelicals or fundamentalists oppose social concern, but they do not want to place social concern on an equal or higher level than preaching the gospel and evangelism. So those are the three that we've discussed. Dispensationalism, the Holiness Movement, and the particular Keswick wing of the Holiness Movement, and then a rejection of the social gospel are things that are beginning to define this fundamentalist movement. We're just now moving into the 20th century, and we'll continue to discuss this as we get into future office hours on Marsden's Fundamentalism in American Culture. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.